How long are your favorite guitar solos? That's the question that I want to ask you, and maybe this is something that we should think about. As I was making this video, I had the revelation to me that some of my favorite guitar solos are a fraction of what I normally practice in terms of improvisation. We talk about, kind of making use of space and all of that sort of stuff a lot of the time, but actually, when I think of my two favorite solos in the world, I think of probably Carlos Rios's solo on Dancing on the Ceiling. I didn't even realize it was Carlos Rios until today, just Googling it. That's like a 14 to 16 second solo. And then same year, 1986, Living on a Prayer, Richie Sambora, again, like 14 to 16 seconds to make a real impact and play two of what I think of as the best guitar solos on pop songs. Why do we have 8-minute long backing tracks when actually what we maybe should be focusing on as guitarists is making a real impact in that short amount of time? And you think about maybe when people were talking about Instagram stuff as being like not really like real life. Well, actually, maybe this was where the early days of Instagram was actually a little bit more like even the heyday of electric guitar, like in the middle of the 80s. Guitar was huge back then, right? Getting guitar solos on pop songs. How long do you actually have to make an impact? Like 16 seconds. Kind of interesting to me. This channel is supported by TrueFire. TrueFire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses. The whole reason that I decided to make YouTube videos in the first place is because what I wanted to be doing was talking to a camera in my bedroom. If you want one really good tip for how to get better at improvising, what you should do is turn my talking parts to 1.25 or 1.5 speed, and therefore you'll find yourself with a little bit of extra time to do some playing over the stuff. Now, I wanted to do this again this month, this kind of called Jam with John type thing where I talk about some of my backing tracks. Now, if you're interested in these, I tried to put up as many backing tracks as possible up on Patreon, so that you guys can get some of the benefit of playing over this stuff. The idea for me with these backing tracks is to kind of create something which is kind of fun to play over, kind of inspiring, and hopefully something that sounds like roughly like some sort of music. So progressions that are a little bit different, maybe, and a bit more pop inspired. Yeah, that sort of stuff. Anyway, so Patreon's a place to get that. It's going to start in a second, this one. And this one was requested by Joan Lauer, the French boy. And I just had to remember not to call him Johan, because I've been calling him that for years. But anyway, it's going to be in D minor, I think. So I'm going to talk you through some of the ideas as I have them. Now, with improvisation, you're probably going to be generally trying not to think too much whilst you're doing it. So by me talking to you, that takes away some of my improvisational skills. So that's a D minor, that's a B flat, that's a G minor. So I'd be thinking about this in my head as being an F major. And we're going from chord 6 to chord 4 to chord 2 and I think it's a really good idea to start off a solo with something singable. And there, what actually came out of the guitar was not what I was aiming for. I think what I was aiming for was more like that, But here's the thing, because I was singing the part, what even came out was fine anyway. This backing track I've actually kept a little bit shorter. I think there's a tendency with backing tracks for us to have really long, spacious things which are not necessarily typical of what an actual solo spot is like. Typically they might be 8 16 bars or 32 bars at a push. So I think it's a good idea. I'm going to do this one again for the intro, but anyway, but what I'm saying there is that it's a good idea to practice kind of shorter improvisation. So instead of doing like a 6-minute backing track where you kind of sort of meander around, maybe do the same backing track like that 6 times and kind of do that thing of building up the solo as you go along. I'm going to come back to that one because I think that's a fair, valid point. You know, we're used to seeing backing tracks at 8 minutes or 10 minutes to optimize for YouTube monetization. This one's in G major. That's chord 1, chord 4, chord 3. Here, this was sort of inspired by Take It Easy by the Commodores. So chord 1, G. Chord 4. Chord 3. Same principle, let's start with something single. We're in G major. Now again, I've cut that one short for the same reason, because I thought, yeah, that's an interesting concept. Maybe I'll do that one again. I'm just going to drag this. I don't know how I'm going to get those to line up again, but it's going to play again now, right? So let's just see how this goes. So just focusing on G major pentatonic and maybe B minor as well, kind of. Something similar to what you did before, especially when you're starting a solo. So yeah, I think that's quite a different way of kind of practicing over these backing tracks. Instead of having a really meandering kind of session, maybe, like I said, just chop these things up into smaller sections and think a little bit more about the shape of that solo. And this maybe will give you a better idea of how to start and end a solo. Like, you're typically going to want to ramp up in energy, right? And that's kind of at least a good starting point for what makes it a solo good, right? This one was based on kind of some Satriani inspired vibes, so, and then C major to A minor to E minor. So I'm thinking chord 4. hitting that sharp for night chord 2. Now again, I've cut that one a little bit short because typically I would be going on for ages and ages, but I think it's a really good idea actually, you know, when you hear records with solos on them, if you even find records with solos on them anymore, a shorter solo is much more likely to be the thing. As I said, 8 bars, 16 bars, 32 bars. I don't think necessarily we should be thinking too much about kind of, you know, a 2-3 minute solo. Like, I know a lot of my intros have this kind of thing going on, but typically we might get like 20, 30, 40 seconds to showcase something, and our stories that we tell as guitar players in a practice room are generally like spread over these long periods of time, and it becomes much more difficult to tell a story if you've only got sort of a very short amount of time to tell it. I think it's something like it's always comes to mind. Why is it now not in my mind at all? John Bon Jovi, Living on a Prayer, like that solo, like a really short kind of window to say something, or even Journey's Don't Stop Believing, that's like a really small window to say something. Empty Rooms, Gary Moore, that's another small window to say something. Like, some of my favourite solos are not necessarily long, but it's about making an impact in that amount of time and trying to tell a story. Maybe when you were used to telling these long stories that kind of have ebbs and flows, actually a shorter solo that kind of builds an impact is probably something that we should be practicing a little bit more, certainly for me at least. So yeah, have a try over these backing tracks if you want. Those of you that get involved, share your playing on Instagram, you know, whatever length you feel is appropriate, but I just think this is something that I need to kind of remember, and it's something I definitely remember when I'm actually sent tracks to solo over. It's, well, although the stuff that I get asked to solo on is often, you know, I get quite a lot of freedom to play over stuff because it's kind of prog stuff that I've been asked to play on, but yeah, it's not always going to be the way. But anyway, if you want these backing tracks, jump over onto Patreon. There's a tier on there for £2 a month, so hopefully it's affordable to most folks. Patreon encourages you to put prices up and up and up. I thought, let's do the opposite and make it so that hopefully more of you can get involved at a lower price, and through scale it becomes worth doing. Preset I'm using was Eric Lee 2023. Again, the point with these in general is that you plug in these presets, and hopefully if you're looking for sounds that you like that are similar to mine, then you can get them. So that's going to work on HX Stomp, Helix or Helix Native, or even Pod Go, Eric Lee 2023. Cheers for stopping by.